Millie's Diner, a quaint, old-fashioned eatery tucked away in a quiet corner of Santa Monica, had always been a second home to Emma Collins. At 29, she'd worked there for 5 years, mastering the rhythm of bustling dinner shifts while memorizing every regular's quirks and orders. Tonight was no different. Plates clattered, the coffee machine hummed, and the faint murmur of a basketball game on the small TV above the counter provided a familiar soundtrack. Emma moved through the diner with practiced ease, her warm smile hiding the exhaustion of another long shift. She balanced plates of pancakes and refilled coffee cups, already counting down the hours to closing time. The routine was comforting, even if predictable. That predictability shattered, though, when the bell above the door jingled. Emma glanced up, expecting one of the regulars, but her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the doorway, dressed in a simple black hoodie and jeans, was Jason Statham. Yes, that Jason Statham, the Hollywood action star known for his tough guy roles and intense presence. His attempt at keeping a low profile didn't stop his mere presence from shifting the diner's atmosphere. Conversations faltered, eyes darted toward him, and a wave of whispers spread like wildfire. Emma steadied herself, gripping her order pad tightly as she approached his booth. Her voice remained calm and professional, masking the butterflies in her stomach. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you tonight?" Jason looked up, his piercing gaze meeting hers, but the intensity softened into a small, polite smile. "Just a coffee black, and maybe a slice of apple pie, if you've got it." "Coming right up," Emma replied, retreating to the counter to fill his order. She could feel the eyes of other patrons following her every move. It wasn't every day an international movie star strolled into a small-town diner. As she placed the coffee and pie in front of him, she noticed the tension simmering nearby. One of the regulars, Greg Stanton, a middle-aged man with a perpetual scowl and a loud, opinionated voice, was glaring at Jason from across the room. Greg had always been quick to criticize anyone who didn't fit his narrow worldview, and Emma braced herself as he stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Aren't you that Hollywood guy, Jason Statham?" Greg's voice carried across the diner, silencing the chatter. Jason looked up, his expression unreadable. "Yes, that's me." Greg crossed his arms, his tone dripping with disdain. "Figures. You play heroes on screen, but what do you actually do for real people? You ever done anything for the folks who actually need help?" Emma's stomach churned. She could see the discomfort on Jason's face, though he kept his composure. "I try to give back where I can," Jason said calmly. "I support charities and causes that matter to me." Greg scoffed loudly. "Sounds like a PR stunt to me." The diner was silent, the tension thick. Emma couldn't hold back anymore. She stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "That's not fair, Greg. Jason Statham has done a lot for people. He's funded programs for underprivileged kids and supported veterans. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't real." Greg's face reddened, his eyes narrowing as he glared at her. "And you know this how? You believe everything you read on the internet?" "I believe in actions speaking louder than words," Emma shot back. "It's easy to sit here and judge, but he's actually making a difference." "What are you doing, Greg?" Greg huffed and returned to his seat, muttering under his breath. The tension eased slightly, but the damage had been done. Emma could feel the eyes of everyone in the diner on her, but her focus was on Jason. He gave her a small nod of gratitude, his expression one of quiet appreciation. Before she could fully process what had just happened, her boss, Mr. Whitman, emerged from the back office. His expression was dark, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Emma," he said, motioning her toward the counter. She approached him hesitantly, her heart sinking as she saw the anger in his eyes. "What were you thinking?" he demanded in a low voice. "You don't argue with customers, especially not regulars like Greg." "I wasn't arguing," Emma protested. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be treated that way." Whitman shook his head, his jaw tightening. This is a business, not a debate club. Greg and the other regulars keep the place running. I can't afford to lose them." "So you're taking his side?" Emma asked incredulously. "I'm saying you crossed a line, and I can't have that," Whitman said firmly. "I'm sorry, Emma. You're fired." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Fired? For defending someone from unnecessary ridicule? Her hands trembled as she tried to process what was happening. "You're firing me for standing up for what's right." "It's not personal," Whitman said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'll give you a few days to transition out." Emma couldn't believe it. Millie's diner had been her second home for years, and now she was being tossed aside over one confrontation. With a lump in her throat, she untied her apron, placed it on the counter, and walked out without another word. Outside, the cool evening air hit her like a wake-up call. Her world felt like it was crumbling, but she knew she had no choice but to move forward. The next morning, Emma returned to the diner to collect her final paycheck. As she approached the door, she noticed something unusual: a sleek black SUV parked out front. Her heart pounded as she pushed open the door, unsure of what to expect. Inside, the diner was unusually quiet. All eyes were on Jason Statham, sitting calmly in a booth. Jason stood as soon as he saw her. "Emma," he said, his tone warm yet serious. "Can we talk?" Emma hesitated, still reeling from the events of the previous night. "Why are you here?" she asked cautiously. Jason's smile was faint but genuine. "I heard what happened after I left. I couldn't stand by and let you lose your job because of me." Behind the counter, Whitman hovered nervously, clearly unsure of how to handle the presence of a celebrity in his establishment. Jason turned to him, his expression firm but calm. "You fired her for defending me," he said. "That doesn't sit well with me." Whitman stammered, his face flushing red. "It's not like that. She disrupted the diner. Greg's a valued customer." Jason raised an eyebrow. "And decency isn't a valued trait here?" Whitman opened his mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. Jason turned back to Emma, his gaze steady. "I've been looking for someone like you. Someone with integrity, courage, and the ability to stand up for what's right." Emma blinked, confused. "I don't understand." Jason reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. "I run a foundation that helps underprivileged youth. We need someone who can connect with people, manage outreach programs, and inspire others. I think you'd be perfect for the role." Emma stared at the card, her hands trembling. "Me? Why me?" Jason smiled. "Because real heroes don't need a spotlight. You showed me that yesterday." For the first time in hours, hope flickered in Emma's chest. Maybe losing her job wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something far greater. Emma stood there, holding the business card as if it were a lifeline. The air inside the diner felt thick with tension, and every pair of eyes seemed glued to the unfolding scene. Jason's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the unease radiating from Mr. Whitman. For a moment, Emma was unsure how to respond. The events of the past 24 hours had turned her life upside down, and now this, an opportunity so unexpected that it felt surreal. "Are you serious?" she finally asked, her voice quiet but steady. Jason nodded, his expression unwavering. "I don't take these things lightly, Emma. I saw something in you yesterday, something rare. You stood up for what you believed in, even when it cost you. That's exactly the kind of person we need." Emma's mind raced. The idea of leaving the diner behind for good had seemed like a harsh reality only minutes ago, but now it felt like a door opening to something much bigger. Still, doubt crept in. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "I've never worked in something like this before. What if I'm not good enough?" Jason's smile softened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Everyone starts somewhere. I didn't know the first thing about acting when I got into the business, but someone believed in me. Now I'm paying it forward. If you're willing to take a chance on yourself, I promise you won't regret it." Before Emma could respond, Mr. Whitman cleared his throat, stepping closer. His face was pale, and his hands fidgeted nervously. "Look, Jason, I mean, Mr. Statham, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Emma's a valued employee, and, well, maybe I overreacted last night. She can have her job back if she wants it." Emma turned to face him, her brows furrowed. "Now you want me back? After everything?" Whitman avoided her gaze, his discomfort evident. "I was just trying to keep the peace. You know how Greg can be." Jason interjected, his voice low but firm. "You're not trying to keep the peace. You're trying to save face. But let me make one thing clear. Emma deserves better than this, and she's going to get it, whether it's here or somewhere else." Whitman stammered, unsure how to respond. Jason turned back to Emma. "The choice is yours. If you want to stay here, that's your decision. But if you're ready for something more, my foundation is waiting." Emma looked down at the card in her hand, the weight of the moment sinking in. Millie's diner had been her safe space for years, but it had also been her cage. For the first time, she saw a path forward, one where she could do more than just serve coffee and endure the whims of difficult customers. She took a deep breath and looked Jason in the eye. "I'm in," she said firmly. Jason's smile widened. "Good, let's get started." Emma turned to Whitman, her voice steady but laced with finality. "I'll be back for my last paycheck. Consider this my resignation." Whitman's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but he said nothing. Emma grabbed her coat and followed Jason out of the diner, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The sleek black SUV parked outside gleamed under the midday sun. Jason opened the passenger door for her, and she hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the diner. The life she'd known for so long felt like a distant memory already. With a final deep breath, she climbed into the car, and Jason closed the door behind her. As the SUV pulled away, Emma couldn't help but ask, "So, what exactly does this foundation do?" Jason leaned back in his seat, his tone relaxed but purposeful. "We focus on empowering underprivileged communities. Scholarships, mentorship programs, job training, you name it. The goal is to give people the tools they need to succeed, no matter where they come from." Emma nodded, her mind already racing with questions. "And you want me to help with that?" Jason glanced at her, his expression serious. "Not just help, I want you to lead. You've got the heart for it, Emma. The rest, you'll learn." The weight of his words settled on her. Lead? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. But as the city blurred past the car windows, she felt a spark of determination she hadn't known she possessed. This was her chance to make a difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of others. The SUV pulled up to a sleek glass building downtown. Jason led her through the lobby, where employees greeted him with warm smiles and nods of respect. They rode the elevator to the top floor, and when the doors opened, Emma was greeted by a breathtaking view of the city skyline. The office was modern and spacious, filled with natural light and buzzing with activity. "This is it," Jason said, gesturing around. "Welcome to your new home." Emma couldn't suppress a small laugh. "It's a bit of a step up from Millie's diner." Jason chuckled. "You'll get used to it." He introduced her to a team of colleagues, each one more welcoming than the last. They walked her through her responsibilities, explaining the foundation's ongoing projects and how she'd fit into the puzzle. By the end of the day, Emma's head was spinning, but she felt more alive than she had in years. As she prepared to leave, Jason approached her with a folder. "One more thing," he said. "I want you to take a look at this tonight." Emma opened the folder to find a proposal for a new community center in a struggling neighborhood, a project that was still in its early stages. Her name was written at the top of the cover page as the proposed project lead. "Me?" she asked, stunned. Jason nodded. "I meant what I said, Emma. You're ready for this." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to let her emotions get the better of her. Thank you, she said quietly. I won't let you down. Jason smiled, his gaze steady. I know you won't. As she left the building that evening, the city lights stretching before her, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. This was the start of a new chapter, one where she could finally step into her own power. And for the first time, she was ready. The next morning, Emma arrived at the Foundation's headquarters early, determined to dive headfirst into her new role. The sleek office building gleamed in the morning sunlight, a stark contrast to the quaint, worn-down charm of Millie's diner. Emma clutched the folder Jason had given her, filled with plans for the community center. She had spent the previous night poring over every detail, determined to prove to herself and to Jason that she was capable of leading this project. As she stepped out of the elevator onto the top floor, the bustling energy of the Foundation greeted her. Staff moved purposefully through the open office, their conversations a mix of passion and strategy. Emma couldn't help but feel a surge of both excitement and nervousness. She was no longer just a waitress. She was part of something bigger, something meaningful. Jason spotted her from across the room and walked over with a warm smile. Emma, how's the first day treating you? She smiled back, her grip tightening on the folder. Good. I mean, a little overwhelming, but good. Jason nodded knowingly. That's natural. Take it one step at a time. Did you have a chance to look at the community center proposal? I did, she said, holding up the folder. It's an incredible project. I'm honored you'd trust me with something like this. Jason's expression turned serious. Emma, trust isn't the issue. I've seen what you're capable of. What matters now is how you bring your unique perspective to this. The people in that neighborhood don't just need a building. They need someone who understands them, who will fight for them. That's where you come in. His words settled deeply within her. She nodded, her determination solidifying. I'll give it everything I've got. Jason smiled, his confidence in her unwavering. That's all I ask. For the next few hours, Emma threw herself into the work. She met with the Foundation's project managers, discussed budgets with the finance team, and brainstormed ideas for the community center's programs. Her ability to connect with people quickly became apparent. Her warmth and sincerity made everyone feel heard, and her sharp mind helped her keep up with the fast pace of the discussions. As the day progressed, Emma began to feel more at home in her new role. She started to see the bigger picture. The Foundation wasn't just about funding projects. It was about creating lasting change. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something truly impactful. But just as she was beginning to find her footing, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Foundation's office. Emma was in the middle of reviewing blueprints for the community center when a receptionist approached her. Emma, there's someone here to see you, the receptionist said, her tone cautious. He says it's urgent. Emma frowned, setting the blueprints aside. Who is it? The receptionist hesitated. He didn't give a name, just said it's important. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Emma made her way to the reception area. Standing there was a man she didn't recognize. Tall, with sharp features and a confident demeanor. He wore a sleek suit that seemed almost out of place in the relaxed atmosphere of the Foundation. Miss Bennett, the man said, extending a hand. My name is Victor Hayes. I believe we need to talk. Emma hesitated before shaking his hand. I'm sorry, do I know you? Victor's smile was polite but calculating. Not yet, but I represent certain interests that align, or perhaps conflict, with the work you're doing here. Her unease grew. What do you mean? Victor gestured to a nearby seating area. Perhaps we could sit and discuss it in detail. Emma led him to a quiet corner of the lobby, her mind racing. Once they were seated, Victor leaned forward, his tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm here about the community center project, he began. It's a commendable idea, but I have reason to believe there are complications you may not be aware of. Complications, Emma repeated, her brow furrowing. What kind of complications? Victor slid a document across the table. Emma opened it, her eyes scanning the text. It detailed financial transactions tied to the project, funds that appeared to have been misallocated. She felt a chill run down her spine. "This doesn't make sense," she said, her voice quiet. "Are you saying someone's stealing from the foundation?" Victor leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I'm not making accusations, just presenting facts. It's up to you to decide what to do with them." Emma's mind raced. If what Victor was saying was true, it could jeopardize everything the foundation stood for. But why was he bringing this to her? Why not go directly to Jason? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Victor's smile tightened. "Let's just say I have a vested interest in ensuring the foundation remains transparent, and you strike me as someone who values the truth." Emma wasn't sure whether to trust him, but she couldn't ignore the possibility that there was more going on than she realized. She needed to get to the bottom of it, and fast. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," she said carefully. "I'll look into it." Victor nodded, standing to leave. "I'm sure you will. I'll be in touch." As he walked away, Emma felt a knot of tension in her chest. She didn't know who Victor Hayes was or what his motives were, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Determined to uncover the truth, she headed straight for Jason's office, the document clutched tightly in her hand. Whatever was happening, she was going to find out, and she wasn't going to let anyone jeopardize the work they were doing. Emma approached Jason's office with a mix of determination and hesitation. She had barely known him for a week, and already she was about to confront him with allegations that could shake the very foundation of everything he had built. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door. "Come in," Jason's voice called, calm and confident. She stepped inside, clutching the document Victor Hayes had given her. Jason was sitting at his desk, reviewing a stack of papers, but he looked up and immediately noticed the tension in her face. "Emma," he said, setting the papers aside. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated for a moment, before walking to his desk and placing the document in front of him. "This was given to me today, by a man named Victor Hayes. He claims there's something shady going on with the community center project." Jason's brows furrowed as he opened the folder and scanned the contents. His expression hardened, but not in the way Emma expected. There wasn't shock or guilt. It was something closer to frustration. "Victor Hayes," Jason muttered, leaning back in his chair. He let out a slow breath, his jaw tightening. "I should have known he'd show up sooner or later." Emma crossed her arms, her voice steady but edged with concern. "Who is he? And why does he have this information?" Jason looked up at her, his gaze sharp but not accusatory. "Victor Hayes is a corporate shark, a venture capitalist who thrives on exploiting weaknesses in organizations like ours. He's been trying to undermine the foundation for years, hoping to gain leverage or force me into a partnership. This," he gestured to the document, "is just another one of his tactics." Emma blinked, taken aback. "So you're saying this isn't true? The misallocated funds?" Jason shook his head. "The funds aren't misallocated. They're in escrow, held temporarily while we finalize permits and contracts. It's standard procedure for a project like this. But Victor isn't interested in the truth. He's interested in creating doubt and leveraging it to his advantage." Emma felt a wave of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a lingering unease. "Why would he come to me, though? I'm new here. I don't have any power." Jason stood, walking around the desk to face her. "Because you're new, Emma. You don't know the full history of the foundation yet, which makes you an easy target for manipulation. Victor likely thought he could plant seeds of doubt in you and use you to destabilize us from the inside." Emma felt a surge of indignation. "Well, he miscalculated. I came straight to you because I believe in what this foundation stands for. But Jason, if he's willing to go this far, what else might he try?" Jason smiled faintly, clearly impressed by her resolve. That's why I brought you on board, Emma. You're sharp, and you don't let people push you around. But you're right. Victor doesn't give up easily. He'll keep digging, looking for cracks. We have to be ready for him. How? Emma asked, her voice steady but curious. Jason's expression darkened slightly. By making sure there are no cracks to exploit, I'll review our financials again, just to be certain everything is airtight. In the meantime, I want you to focus on the community center project. If we keep delivering on our promises, Victor won't have anything to stand on. Emma nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I won't let him get to me. Jason placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know you won't. You've already proven you're tougher than most. But keep your guard up, Emma. People like Victor don't just walk away when their first plan fails. She left Jason's office feeling both reassured and uneasy. Victor Hayes wasn't just some meddling outsider. He was a serious threat. And while Jason seemed confident in their ability to handle him, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than either of them realized. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into her work, determined to make the community center project a success. She met with architects, local leaders, and potential donors, carefully balancing the needs of the neighborhood with the foundation's resources. But no matter how focused she tried to be, Victor Hayes lingered in the back of her mind. Her suspicions deepened when she noticed a man loitering near the foundation's offices. He was tall, dressed in a nondescript suit, and seemed to always be just out of earshot during her meetings. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, but when she saw him again at a coffee shop near the office, she knew something was wrong. Emma decided to confront him. She approached him as he sat at a table, pretending to scroll through his phone. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp. "Can I help you with something?" The man looked up, clearly startled but trying to play it cool. "I don't know what you mean." "You've been hanging around the foundation all week," Emma said, crossing her arms. "Who are you, and what do you want?" He hesitated, glancing around as if checking for witnesses. Finally, he sighed and leaned closer. "Look, I'm just doing my job. Victor Hayes sent me." Emma's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. "Why?" The man shrugged. "He's keeping tabs on the project. Wants to know if there's anything he can use." "Well, there isn't," Emma said firmly. "So you can tell him to back off." The man smirked, his confidence returning. "You're new to this game, aren't you? Victor doesn't back off. If there's nothing to use, he'll create something." Emma's heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. "We'll see about that." She turned and walked away, her mind racing. It was clear that Victor was escalating his efforts, and she needed to act fast. But how could she stop someone as powerful and relentless as Victor Hayes? Back at the office, she confided in Jason, recounting the encounter with the man at the coffee shop. Jason listened intently, his jaw tightening as she spoke. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said. "Victor's not just trying to undermine the foundation. He's trying to intimidate you." Emma shook her head. "I'm not scared of him, but I am worried about what he might do next." Jason nodded. "So am I. But we're not going to let him win. I'll reach out to some contacts and see if we can get more information on his plans. In the meantime, stay focused on the project. The best way to beat Victor is to keep moving forward." Emma agreed, but as she returned to her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. Victor Hayes was more dangerous than she had realized, and if they weren't careful, he could destroy everything they were working to build.